So I'm just very grateful to be here. And we're here today in Carlsbad at this great company because we have something very important going on in this country right now, and that's tariffs. The tariff situation is something that is very much on my mind every single day, and it will continue to be in the coming weeks and coming months. And we've got to fight for lower prices for families, and we've got to fight to defend our small businesses. For months, we've heard the president and my Republican colleagues in Congress talk about how they were going to lower prices on day one. You all heard that, right? Lower prices on day one. Well, we're nearly 100 days into this new administration, and they haven't done anything to lower costs. In fact, I would argue they've done the exact opposite. By jacking up tariffs and by making up trade policy literally on the fly, it seems, the administration is punishing working families, squeezing small businesses, making difficult job cuts a reality for small businesses all across this country, and destabilizing our economy. I hear this from so many business leaders in this community and throughout our district in greater Southern California that the investments that they were intending to make, the hiring they were intending to do, the purchasing that they were intending to do, they've put everything on pause because of these tariffs, because of the volatility, the uncertainty of the markets, and the lack of being able to predict what will come next. Everything is on pause. And what that means is the investments are not occurring, the jobs are not being created, and we run the risk not only of slowing growth, but reversing the progress that we've been making. And that would lead, of course, to the R word that nobody wants, which is recession. So my family, that thing you should know, my family, I have a 12-year-old son, my wife and I, 12-year-old son, 11-year-old daughter. We play some of the games that you all make right here. And yeah, and I'm going to buy a few more because okay, perfect. That's why I came now, because I wanted to make sure to buy that before everything doubled. But if I went home tonight and I told my 12-year-old and 11-year-old that I went to a toy company and I did not bring home some toys, I think I would not be very popular with them. So these games that the op makes, they play a very important role in the lives of kids and their families. Games support child development, and they give us, in my house, family bonding time and, frankly, time away from the doggone screens that we're all stuck in front of all the time. But unfortunately, this is going to become more expensive. It's going to become more unattainable for many families if these tariffs lead to price increases. Roughly 80% of the op games products are manufactured in Asia. And under the administration's current tariff rules, many of their games could double in price. I'll say that again. Many of their games could double in price. So let me be clear. The tariffs are a tax on everyday goods. China isn't paying these taxes. It'll be our local businesses. It'll be our families who have to buy these products. They're going to be the ones who are paying these prices. And small businesses like the op games are going to get squeezed from both ends. It's going to cost them more to import games, so they'll be forced to raise their own prices. But now families must also face a choice. Do they pay more for the game? Or if they're already getting squeezed with high prices at the grocery store and other necessities, do they purchase the game at all? This means lost revenue that many small businesses simply cannot afford to bear. And the harm in these tariffs is not just about prices. By making up tariff rates on the fly, President Trump is creating enormous uncertainty for businesses. Businesses like the op games need months, sometimes even a year, to plan their orders and to ship them out to families across the country. Planning, what a novel concept, right? Thinking ahead. Instead, the tariffs, as I said, have ground supply chains to a halt, and this is the time when toy companies like this one are supposed to be preparing for this coming holiday season. It's only the middle of April, and already that's when the planning occurs. So these import taxes are raising prices for businesses, they're raising prices for families, and there really is no end in sight. Tariffs should be the last resort, not the first impulse. I'm all for policies that address our unfair trade practices, protect our national security, and level the playing field. But that's not what these tariffs do. In February, I wrote to the president to make clear that our communities do not support this approach to trade, which harms more than it helps. So I'm calling on President Trump and his economic team to sit back down, take a deep breath, lift these blanket tariffs, and work towards smart, targeted agreements that punish bad actors, not American families. And in Congress, I'm going to keep pressing for bipartisan solutions that lower costs, strengthen domestic manufacturing, and let businesses like the Op Games keep innovating and hiring right here in Carlsbad and throughout our congressional district. Families deserve a break, entrepreneurs deserve certainty, and our economy deserves better than a trade war of choice. I think it's a very dumb trade war. So thank you again to Dane. Thank you to the entire team for opening your doors and to everyone for standing with us today. Together, we're going to keep fighting for fair trade and lower prices for the hardworking people of this district and throughout the nation. Thank you very much. And with that, I'm going to introduce Dane Chapin, the CEO of the Op Games. Dane, thank you so much for opening your doors today.
Mike, you made my speech really easy. Ditto.
Perfect.
You really covered the points. I really want to thank you for coming here and making an effort. We were on the phone for half an hour yesterday, and you were extraordinarily well prepared. And I can see how serious you're taking this issue. Your office is taking this issue, and I'm duly impressed by your preparation. So thank you very much. I know this is just not this is a serious issue for you, and you're doing the work to get it right. So thank you very much. Yeah, the op is in the business of joy, laughter, and lifetime memories. But like you said, we're also in the business of family bonding and family time and childhood development. And when I think about my life, some of my fondest memories in life were playing cards with my grandparents, and we'd go over there, right? And yeah, if there was one thing, I would give up practically anything, everything to spend those time with my grandparents again. And it's just really valuable time. Personally, I'm a huge believer in fair trade and fair trade practices. And if we have trading partners that are protectionist, we need to deal with it. And we've got to be strategic in how we deal with it. And we're finding, I've got a couple stories I'm going to share today, talking about, the punitive nature of some of the practices that are being employed. Unlike Apple and tech companies, and we operate on pretty thin margins. Apple's at a 30% margin. We're at a 10% margin. So we have very little, margin to make this thing work. And one of the things I question is, some animals are equal and some animals are more equal. And so, why is Apple at 30%? If you really want to create some pain, Apple has enormous leverage, and yet they're exempt from this trading war. So, I question the consistency of the policy, and I think it's really important to make note of that. Like all businesses, we need a reasonable level of predictability. Tell a little story. It happened yesterday. Paul, our head of procurement, who's going to speak for a minute or two, comes to mine and Tom's office, our president, says, we got a little problem. Well, what's that? Well, I got this bill from Customs. True story, you guys. We're in real time with this thing. We got a bill from Customs for $920,000. I said, what the hell is that? Well, it turns out that goods left Hong Kong, point of origin, middle of March, 15 containers. At the time, there was a 20% tariff, about $150,000 tariff bill. We need the inventory, so we green lighted it. In this case, those goods were headed to Vancouver. From there, they'd take a train to Chicago. They were on a train to Chicago yesterday. We find this out. We had a bill from Customs for $920,000. And because Vancouver is in a foreign country, they deemed that the point of entry, point of origin, and we're hit with a $920,000 tariff bill, $60,000 a container. We're a small business. We're obviously gonna, see what our recourse is. Those goods actually may go back to China. We don't have custody of them yet. They may go back to China and do a round trip, and we'll wait till, but it's unaffordable. those cost of goods are higher than our actual price we charge, and it's not going to work. You can't double prices overnight. Most of our, you alluded to this, most of our stuff is made in China, about 80%. We do make some stuff domestically. We make enormous effort to make stuff domestically. We've got 80 high-level, high-wage people that work here. And we did the math, we rely on probably 1,000 low-wage, low-skilled workers out of China to make the stuff that we sell. The US is almost at full employment. So you don't open those jobs up tomorrow, and automation doesn't replace a lot of those jobs either. So we're working really diligently where we can to make stuff domestic, and you can't do it overnight. And I'm already hearing of businesses going out of business in the U.S. because of the unpredictability and the nature of the tariffs. For us, we have put a hold on any new orders out of China. So, think about the merge. If there's a huge accident, traffic backs up for miles, right? Think about it. We've all been in that. So what happens? You're late for work, but the domino effect isn't just a couple of hours. Maybe you're scheduled for a hip surgery that morning. You miss that, and it takes you 2 months to get scheduled. I know firsthand what it takes to get scheduled. I have a hip surgery. I've had two of them. And so the downline effects of this, that clears in a day, but there's still downline effects of that traffic jam. You missed a dentist appointment. You had to wait for the cable guy. You couldn't wait. Now you wait a month. There's enormous impacts that reverberate for months that people need to think about. My job's not to whine. On the contrary, frankly, it's to educate people about the challenges and the enormous collateral damage that's being inflicted on hardworking, patriotic Americans. So, a lot of people work remote. We've got a total of 80 employees. We did the math the other day. There's almost 800 years of cumulative years of people. If you add up everybody, the years they worked here, we have 800 years, and it could go down the drain in months. And so I really appreciate the work you're doing on our behalf. And it's just not the toy business. And really appreciate your efforts, and I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate everybody here on the show's support. So we're going to win this, and we're going to, it's going to be difficult, but we're going to prevail, and we're going to make Christmas happen. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Dane doesn't realize this, but he brought up something I hadn't thought about for many years, which was the memories of playing cards with my grandparents. And it reminds me, I need to play cards with my kids. We have to just get off. Perfect, excellent. We double the price. We better buy them now. But just the opportunity to have those connections that you just don't get if you're not here to pick on Apple, but if you're just looking at an iPad all day, it's just not the same. Just not the same. So with that, I want to introduce Paul May. Paul is the Senior VP of Production for the Op Games.
Thank you very much. I don't know what more to add. Mike and Dana both said exactly what I was going to bring forward. What we need is stability in the mix of trying to run our business and to manage the employees that we have. People want stability. They want to feel safe. They want to feel comfortable. Trying to do business and budget through this entire thing is almost impossible. We put these, as Dane was alluding to, we had some containers that went on board ship. We were anticipating that it was going to be a 20% tariff on those particular items. It comes back that it's 125, and then it goes up to 145% tariff on those items before it even lands in the US. That happened all within a matter of 25 days that these things changed. We had budgeted for a certain amount throughout the year. How do I budget for the year when I don't know what is going to take place from day to day, from month to month within our business? There is no stability in that. And we as human beings, we strive to feel comfortable. We strive to feel peaceful. We strive to feel stability in our lives. I would say that, in my family, I'm oldest of 7 kids. We played a lot of games together, and we did a lot of stuff together. We wanted to spend time together. We here are making toys and games so that we can bring families together and really have that family reunion. And also, we play games here every day at the office, especially on Wednesdays. We're together, we laugh together, we play together, and we just want to spend time together. That's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to make phones and rockets and all these things. We just want to spend time together. And I know in my family, most of my family members are one catastrophic event from, just being in complete turmoil in their lives, and they have to, they feel a sense of hopelessness. Yesterday I felt a sense of hopelessness in this, in this situation, going through this giant bill that came through, and you're trying to manage cash flows and budgets and things like that. And it is almost impossible to do that when you've got this much chaos that's going on. I don't want to see small businesses in this country and in this community of Oceanside and Carlsbad and Vista and all these places that are struggling to stay alive and struggling to stay in business because of the amount of turmoil that's going on within this current situation. So I don't have a lot more to add than that, but I appreciate everybody. I love all my employees that are here. I thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Paul. So I think all the time about the workers that will be impacted all across our community by these tariffs. So I think about all of you and what you're going to have to deal with for these coming weeks and months. I hope that these folks come to their senses, the administration, and they reverse a lot of these policies. But I also think about our families. I think about children. I think about their parents. And what I know as a member of Congress is I've looked at all sorts of data, and there's no better investment that the federal government makes dollar for dollar that when you invest in a child, when you make sure they have enough to eat, when you make sure they have a good education, when you make sure that they're on a trajectory towards success, the outcomes long term are off the charts. So every dollar that you invest in the first 5 years of a child's life is usually a 7 to 10 to 1 economic multiple, getting that money back long term in terms of the outcomes, the positive outcomes. The more taxes that they pay, the less that they're involved in any criminal justice related activity. Everything is better when you invest in that early childhood, and just the opportunity for working families in a district like ours, which is an expensive place to live, to be able to have enough money to make ends meet so they can afford to buy your games is really important. So I wanted to bring in Alexis Avina, the Chief Early Childhood Education Officer for MAC, which is an amazing organization. I'm going to hand it over to Alexis. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you, Congressman Levin, for your leadership and bringing visibility to an issue that touches the lives of so many families and educators. As you mentioned, I'm Dr. Alexis Avina, Chief Early Childhood Education Officer at MAC, and every day our Head Start and Early Head Start programs serve hundreds of children across San Diego County. We are helping them to grow, learn, and dream beyond the limits of poverty. In early childhood education, we have a saying, play is the work of children. But what we mean is this, play is where children build the skills that shape their future. Developmentally appropriate toys and learning tools like blocks, puzzles, sensory bins, and pretend play sets, they're not extras, they are essentials. These materials help children develop language, strengthen fine motor skills, grasp math and science concepts, and build emotional intelligence. They are how our youngest learners explore the world, solve problems, and imagine what's possible, and spend time with family members. But today we're facing the weight of rising costs. Materials that once cost $25 are now starting to double or more. And when you are an organization like us, we run 40 plus centers serving 20 children per classroom. These increases are more than just line items for us. They're roadblocks. Budgets stretch, quality is threatened, and educators are forced to choose between what children need and what children can afford. And the impact doesn't stop there. At the classroom door, low-income families already juggling rising food, housing, and transportation costs can't afford to fill the gaps at home. This means fewer opportunities for learning outside of school, fewer tools for creativity, and fewer moments for families to connect around play and learning. At MAC, we do everything we can to protect the integrity of our classrooms, repurposing, innovating, and stretching every dollar. But we cannot innovate our way out of systemic underfunding. We need policies and partnerships that reflect the real cost and quality of education and honor the full humanity of children and families we serve. This moment calls for more than just awareness. It calls for action rooted in equity. Every child, regardless of income or zip code, deserves access to learning materials that inspire wonder, ignite curiosity, and lay the foundation for lifelong success. We must ensure that the cost of living does not become the cost of a child's future. Thank you again, Congressman Levin, for standing up for us.
Thank you, Alexis. And along those same lines, I wanted to make sure we heard from a parent who's dealing every single day with rising costs and can speak, I think, very, very succinctly and passionately about what he's experiencing. That's Eric Hayes, who's a MAC parent.
Hi, my name's Eric Hayes, and I'm an extremely proud parent of a child who attends the MAC Head Start program here in San Diego. I have a 4-year-old daughter. Her name is Charlotte, and I can say without reservation that she's the best thing that's ever happened to me in my life. She's given my life purpose, direction, discipline, and being her father has been the most exciting, fun, interesting, and rewarding process that I've ever been a part of. She loves to sing. She loves dressing up like Elsa and Anna from Frozen. She called me Elsa Dad. She loves playing games, being read to. My mom was a school teacher in the Solana Beach School District her entire career. So I know the power of reading and being read to. Literacy and appreciation for books were both held in high regard in my house, and I want that for my daughter as well. Charlotte was born in Tijuana and spent her first 2 years in Mexico. So she's a dual citizen, which I think is super rad. I'm kind of jealous. But due to circumstances out of my control, Charlotte's mother is unable to come to the U.S. to help me raise her daughter. So I'm a 47-year-old first-time single dad. And I think I knew in the abstract that having a child was expensive, but it's insane. I had no idea. I love being a dad, but it's scary sometimes, especially now. I want my daughter to have every opportunity that I had and then some. But toys and games are expensive, and they're looking to get a lot more expensive in the near future or now. Seems like most everything you see lately, groceries, gas, and name, it's probably more than you expect. And when my daughter sees a book or game that piques her interest and her face lights up, it's a punch in the gut to try to explain to her that I can't afford that right now. It could be the choice between dinner or a game. And I'm eternally grateful to Mac and Head Start for providing not only a safe, loving, and dignified learning environment for my daughter, but for all the other services they provide. For instance, verifying that my daughter's seen by her dentist and getting well baby checkups and immunizations, the kind of things that a first-time dad might forget or not even realize they need to do. The Head Start program is crucial to mine and so many families in our community, and it's an investment in the future of the country. Yet even with all the help that MAC and Head Start provide, these rising costs directly impact my ability to provide quality educational games and toys for Charlotte. I want her to be prepared for kindergarten and beyond, so I don't think of these items as frivolous or luxurious expenses. These are necessary tools for me to help ensure that she succeeds in school and has every opportunity that I can provide for her to succeed with. So I want to thank Congressman Levin for taking the time today to shed light on these issues and for helping support working families like mine and so many others. And thank you also to MAC and Head Start for allowing me to be the best father that I can be and supporting me through this journey. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you all got that video so that when Charlotte's older, you can play it for her. I really appreciate everybody being here today, and I look forward to walking around and purchasing a few of these games for my wife and kids. But before that, I'd love to take any questions that anybody may have. No questions. A very quiet group. Going once. Dane's got a question.
Ask you a question. We talked a little bit about, taking control back of tariffs, which used to be a congressional
Yep.
issue.
Yeah.
So what do you need to do to take control back and bring rationality and sort of for this, it's not a unilateral decision on things that can destroy businesses?
Yeah. Thank you for that question, Dane. So Congress has responsibility on tariffs, and Congress has voluntarily given up its power, not just to the Trump administration, but previously as well, when it comes to being able to levy tariffs. And specifically, what I had hoped to do was work with at least a few Republican colleagues to advance what's called a discharge petition. So there are ways that you can get a bill considered by the Congress when you're in the minority. Right now, Democrats are in the minority party. But if you get a majority, 218 members of Congress, to sign a petition, literally a petition, you get them all to sign, and then that will discharge the bill. That's why it's called a discharge petition, to the floor where it's voted on. And that's how you get around the Speaker of the House not wanting to vote on something, or you get around the Republican or the Democratic Party when they're in charge. So I wanted to do that on tariffs, specifically to call into question the emergency declaration that's at the root of the president saying we need these massive tariffs. And I even had a few Republicans that were willing to join me. We'd started having those conversations. But what happened was, did you all hear about something called the continuing resolution? A lot of process here today. So normally in the House of Representatives and the US Senate, we would pass a budget. We would pass a budget, we have bipartisan negotiation, we would fund the government for that year. In the absence of an agreement, or in the absence of really wanting to even have a discussion, Republicans pushed something called a continuing resolution, which is just basically punting, keeping things exactly as they are for a specific duration of time. And look, we've done it in the past on our side of the aisle too. We're very good at kicking the can, unfortunately, in Washington, D.C., rather than having the serious bipartisan discussion that would lead to a better outcome. But my point in bringing this up to you is buried in the continuing resolution that was passed on a party line vote about a month ago was one provision which would block our ability to question the administration on tariffs for the next several months. And so that lasts until September 30. So what it is Mike Johnson, the speaker, and his leadership team, their decision to abdicate, to give up their authority on tariffs to Donald Trump and the executive branch until the end of September. And that's how it went down. And that's one of the many reasons I voted against that continuing resolution, even though I very much want to keep government operating and functioning as normal. So for now, there's been a surrender of that congressional authority. And I think we absolutely must take it back. And it isn't just limited to tariffs, by the way. There has been, I think, the biggest abdication, biggest handoff of authority from a Congress to an administration in the past 3 months, 4 months than ever before in modern American history. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. I got one more
Yep.
question.
Yep, she has a, that's important. That's more important. Go right ahead.
It's a higher authority for me.
You alluded to this just a little bit ago, but given the disparity of public opinion on the most recent election, and given the political turmoil that's going on right now, not just with tariffs, but a lot of other issues, do you think this is an opportunity to get the super far left and the super far right to potentially come together and closer to the middle and to join hands together and say, this is truly insanity, all of these political issues. And can we find commonality? And can we find a solution that solves the problems? And as Paul said, brings a little bit of stability to the American public. And can that happen within Congress?
I hope so. What I see more is not necessarily that those on the extreme will stop being extreme, but I do think what will happen is there will be a renewed emphasis that the country wants for us to own common sense again, and bipartisanship again, and to try to build common ground when it makes sense to do so. And it is tougher than it has ever been. At least my sample set is 7 years. And I can tell you that in that 7 years, the environment has gotten more partisan. The media has gotten more partisan. They never want to know what you're doing working together, for example. We actually had a very unusual opportunity to do something bipartisan. Day before yesterday, we went down to the border and we saw the Tijuana River sewage crisis. And obviously, the Trump administration, just as the Biden administration, very dedicated, at least they're saying all the right things. And that's going to require a bipartisan give and take. So my thing is always try to work with people of either party whenever I can, but also stand up when I have to. And on this tariffs issue, this is crazy. And a lot of my Republican colleagues will say behind closed doors, this is crazy. And I say, okay, well, why don't you all do something about it? And it's either fear or they worry about a primary election, they worry about retaliation. I don't know what it is. But so far, there's been a lack of willingness to speak out against what is so obviously a self destructive policy on tariffs. Because look, when we had the election last November, the economy was not perfect, far from it. But the markets were stable, unemployment was under control, inflation was getting better, and I thought things were looking up in the United States. And I think they were, and hopefully will be again. But I see the tariffs as one of the biggest self-inflicted wounds in recent American history. There's no reason for it. 145%. And we didn't talk about this, but he brought out, if you remember, the president brought out that big chart. And he said, this is what they all tax us, and this is what we're going to tax them. And I looked at the chart, and I said, that's ridiculous. That's not what they charge us in tariffs, any of these countries. And we started asking each other, well, how did they come up with this data? And it turns out they just took the trade deficit and divided it by exports, came up with a number, and then half of that is what we're going to tax them. Or excuse me, double that. No, half of that. So for example, Indonesia, they have $18 billion trade deficit. In other words, the Indonesia sends us $18 billion more in goods than we send them. They divided that by the exports from Indonesia, which are 28 billion. That's roughly what, 63, 64%. And they say that's the tariff on us. That's not the tariff on us. And then cutting that in half, 32% was what we're going to tax them. That doesn't make any sense either. None of it makes any sense. So my wife, just like you, I married well. My wife is an MBA from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, same place that the president went, except my wife went to the actual MBA program and actually went to class because she said one of the very first things you learn at this prestigious university is tariffs are dumb. They're a tool in the toolkit, but the Smoot-Hawley experience of the 1930s suggested you can blow a hole in our economy and you can do it quickly if you're not acting in a responsible, measured way. And that's how the Great Depression was made into the awful experience for Americans of every socioeconomic stature, and we want to avoid that this time. So long story short, they should have just done what my wife said, right? But I very much appreciate the question. We have time for one more. Go ahead.
Given that Republicans have abdicated their responsibility and knowing that the real power in America always lies with the people, what can people do to fight back? The people in this room and the people out in our community.
I would just say everybody here can speak to their friends, their family, their neighbors, their coworkers, and talk about the importance of common sense policies and why these tariffs are a bad idea and how they're going to hurt, how they're going to increase toys, games, everything, cars, you name it. All of it's going to be impacted. If they continue on the path they're on, they're going to do massive harm to this economy. That's not a partisan thing at all. My Republican members of my extended family, I haven't talked to one of them yet that thinks this is a good plan, that this is a good idea. And, I'm still waiting really to hear a good common sense argument about why 145% tariffs on China, why that's necessary. And this is a trade war of our own making. And I hope that they listen. I hope the Trump administration listens and they recognize this is not what the American people want. This is not what they voted for. They voted for lower costs. not higher costs, lower inflation, not doubling the cost of everything, right? Yes.
Two questions for Dane, if that's okay.
Yes, more than okay.
With tariffs as they stand right now, I understand there's been a lot of fluctuation. What would that mean for your business in the short and long term?
Well, we're planning for it as we speak. So every day there's meetings that we weren't having before of, where can we move production? How can we raise prices? Laying people off is the last resort, but it's in play for every toy company in the world, or, in the US right now. So we are scrambling to find alternatives to it. We had projected our best year ever, 30% growth off of last year. We're now looking at maybe it's a slightly growth year, and we're looking at nominal profits, if any. And we had high expectations, and we've been on fire for 2 or 3 years as a company. We've got the best-selling game in the United States right now in Tapple. We've got 4 of the top 10 best-selling games on Amazon. It's almost unprecedented in the toy business. And we're on the cusp of doing some amazing things in this company. And that's all ground to a halt right now. So, yeah, we're going to survive. I've been at this thing for 30 years, a family business that started with my 2 sisters who started it. I got invited into the act, and we had a secretary. There's 4 of us 32 years ago in Encinitas. And we're 80 people now in a global company. And it's a true American success story. And it's under distress right now with things outside of our control. And it's more serious than COVID. It's more serious than the Great Recession. And it's more serious than some of the terrible mistakes that I made over the years that cost us a lot of money. So it's a challenge.
And then the last question I have for you, what else have you heard from other small or medium-sized business owners in North County, if anything at all, regarding the tariffs? Like, have you heard other similar struggles, or have you not really reached out?
We're doing a little remodel on our kitchen right now. And this morning we were meeting with the general contractor and our electrician. Electrician's a one-man shop. He said, Dane, I've got 10 bids out there right now, and I don't know if I can honor any of them. I'm not sure whether to raise my rates from what he charged, 110 or 20 bucks an hour. He said, what am I going to tell my customers? I'm at 200 bucks an hour. So he's single dad, 2 daughters, and the guy works his tail off, and now it's put him in a flux. I've got a friend with $140 million construction project on Bankers Hill. The windows just went up in price by millions of dollars. He's going to end up in litigation on that. He's going to take the windows. He's going to pay the extra money because he can't stop the freight train of a building. So if he stops that building, it's going to go into mothballs for months. To restart it, it's going to take 6 months. So you don't turn this stuff off with a switch. It's enormously challenging. You stole my joke too when you asked about what we can do. So in my case, the congressman called me, and but as he says, you can call your congressman. So
That's perfect.
Thank you.
Well, and plenty of people have. And I tell them, hey, I am with you all the way. We do not want this any more than you, and we're going to do everything we can to fight back with every tool we've got, which included today communicating about it. So I'm very grateful to everybody. Thank you to all the employees of this company, and I look forward to a little tour here. Thank you all for having me. There you go. I think it's still in place.